chance to play with us here with it. But yeah, I mean, people are excited about where you guys are at. And of course, everybody wants to see a player they think can take this team over the hump. I mean, do you feel that? I don't want to call it pressure. I mean, but do you feel that there's a urgency to, hey, let's close the gap and win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the reason why I'm more I don't feel a pressure or urgency. Like what I said last offseason, I said we just don't want to take any steps backwards. We want to keep improving, and we're going to take the same approach. We're not going to take any steps backwards. We're going to keep improving. And what we've done so far is that's what's been working, and we'll adjust to different circumstances when needed. But the overall approach that's not changing. So. We just got to – and, look, you got to say, I'm not a big believer in when you really look deeply into the one player away, like when you look into that narrative, there's one guy away. That's really not realistic because what you're saying is that one player, you might sign that one player in March, and that one player looks good in black and white on a depth chart in March and April, and all through the summer. What if that one player is not available in October, in November, in December? Or what if you're saying one player, you're saying one player on top of all the other players you already have. So what if that one player is available in October, in November, December, but all the other players are not? So that's where I think you got to be a little careful about we just got to take that one player. No, I don't really. I'm not a big believer in that.
So it's a quarterback-driven league, and we know that one player is Jared Goff for you guys right now. How important is it, or where are you guys at in terms of the decision, but also maybe in the conversation of, hey, we don't want him to get into his last year. We want to extend him versus having to use the franchise tag in another year. Is this something that is a priority for you guys to extend Jared Goff?
Yeah, obviously Jared did a great job, and we do collectively as an organization, we do have a sense of the direction that we want to go and proceed with Jared and other players that are eligible for those discussions. But out of respect of the player, out of respect of our process, we just kind of keep those conversations internally, and once we have updates, we'll definitely make sure you guys know.
Michael Badgley signed. Is that a position that you guys feel comfortable with him as the kicker?
Yeah. Badgley, he's done a nice job. He's been clutch. He's throughout his career. He's done what we've needed to do. So he's been good. Now, with all positions, there'll be competition. And Badgley understands that. He knows there'll be competition. But right now, I understand that, he did a nice job. He signed, but he's still going to have competition.
And Brad, when we all know that you're on right now because you're down in Indianapolis talking about the combine, the draft is going to be here in Detroit. We're excited about that, but you're no top 10 pick. You're not picking, obviously you've earned the right to be able to pick later in the draft, 29, and same thing in the second and third rounds. How much more of a challenge is it to find impact players, guys that you want to fill some holes with when you're drafting later and later?
Yeah, I will say I felt comfort in that, and I have a lot of comfort in not only picking later, maybe not even having a first-round pick, back in my tenure with the Rams. So, and it's actually, I find more excitement in it. I feel when you're looking at the top 10, it's just kind of hard to mess up, in my opinion. You got really good players, and you're trying to decide, between, Turks and Caicos and Grand Cayman. You're probably not going to be mad at either one, but I think it's a lot more excitement when you're back there on the back end because you got to deep dive it a lot more. You got to really heavily scrutinize it, and it's a lot of fun. And back my time with the Rams, we found a lot of good players in those rounds. Not even in the first round, but on day two. And I think we've proved that we can do that here as well. So I don't have any I don't have any angst about not having that high pick. I'm actually excited.
Lions general manager Brad Holmes, we appreciate some of your time, Brad. We'll catch up before the draft, all right?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Right, yep, thanks, Brad.
Falar with the update next, 97.1.
Brought to you by Northville Lumber. The scene in Chicago yesterday, something to behold. An emotional tribute for Patrick Kane. Chris Chelios' number retired. A close game between the Wings and the Blackhawks, and a breakaway overtime winner by Kane to beat his former team in dramatic fashion, 3-2. An unbelievable finish to give Detroit 5 straight wins and 2 more invaluable points. They improve to 32-20-6 and keep the top wildcard spot in the playoff standings. Michigan could not upset Purdue at home, a game with a lot of Boilermaker fans in Ann Arbor, by the way. 84-76 the final, but Juwan Howard was judging his team by a different metric. Yeah, a lot of heart, but another L as Terrence Williams II expressed his disappointment at the crowd at Chrysler, saying that it felt like Mackey Arena and was definitely a discuss factor in the game. Things didn't get much better for the Breslin Center as Ohio State upset the Spartans 60-57 with the last-second shot to send MSU to a second straight setback. And Combine Week is here. We are expected to hear from Lions GM Brad Holmes again over the next couple of days, but we just had him right here on Costa and Jansen, as we'll be going over exactly what he said here in just a couple of minutes. From the Corewell Health Sports Desk, I'm Chris Falar. For more, go to 97.1 The Ticket and Odyssey.com.
All right, your reactions, 248-539-9797. You hear from the GM of your football team in a big offseason. What did you make of his approach and what he said? 248-539-9797. John, the Goff thing. He didn't say, well, yeah, of course we're extending him. He didn't say, of course he's our guy. He left it intentionally close to the vest. Do I read anything into that?
I'm sure you will. But no, I don't.
Hold on. I've turned a corner. I want to get him paid. I was surprised. I thought it would have been a layup to go, well, of course, we'll figure out terms, and it's got to make sense for the player and us, but we like him and want him back.
I think we will know in the next couple of weeks. If we don't go into free agency and he's got an extension, because that extension clears up more cap room for a lot of the different things that they may or may not want to do
it lets you
during
plan.
free agency.
Yeah, it lets you plan beyond this season what you're going to do with the structure of your football team, because he is a big picture guy, not a rush in and get one guy to fix everything. So maybe it's nothing, but it felt intentionally vague. And he says out of respect to the player, which he said previously before, so I don't want to overread into it, but it felt like... Well, why not? Why is it not just,
as a guy in that situation, as the player in that situation, you're always looking, your agent is always looking, well, what is he saying? Every single time he opens his mouth. Yeah. It's a negotiating tactic. So he's in large part protecting himself from putting anything out there that the agent could say, hey, well, you said
I
this
heard
to
you
the
on
fan
Costa and
base.
Jansen. You said 4 years, $220 million. We're holding you to. He would never say that.
No, but anything that you can put together to say, hey, we heard your intentions. We heard what you're talking about. This is now our price. That's oversimplifying
but is it a secret? I mean, it shouldn't be a secret, right? Jared Goff, chance the guy delivers.
You know what? Should a hangnail be not listed on the injury report? They treat everything as a state secret. So it's no shock that re-signing or extending your quarterback would be a state secret. And here's why. Everybody knows what cap numbers teams have available. Mm-hmm. And so as you're trying to make plans, okay, what can we offer, L'Jarius Sneed? And if the Lions do X, Y, and Z, they're not going to be able to afford, even though they need a cover corner, they can't afford to offer what we're offering L'Jarius Sneed. Now, all of a sudden, hey, they rework Jared Goff's contract. that number changes for what the Lions can now afford, and now it sends a message to everybody else. We're not necessarily telling you we're going to go for L'Jarius Sneed or Chris Jones or Michael Onwenu or insert any free agent, but we do have the power and ability.
Do you think, in keeping all the options open, do you think there's a scenario where if the ask is too high, they let him play out next year and keep the franchise tag in their back pocket and they don't extend him?
Oh, sure. If the ask is too high, yeah, no question. But that's between Brad Holmes and Goff's agent.
No, I only ask because it felt like a foregone conclusion off the heels of last season that the man would get a 3, 4, 5-year deal. Clearly, the number would depend on the two parties negotiating. But is there a world where they simply?
I don't. I think it has played out.
I think so too.
And so I think I will be shocked if we go into next year and Jared Goff is not under contract for the next 5 years. And that's a 4-year extension because he's got 1 year.
Current,
The 4 would be added on to the end. So please don't lose your minds. I'm not saying a 5-year extension. It's a 4-year extension.
John said lifetime contract.
He will be here for 5 years. At least the contract says he's going to be here for 5 years.
You talk guarantees, you never know. Anything else that jumped out from what he said to us?
I'll have to go back and listen, word for word so we could
parse through
it. But I think it's interesting. I like the fact that he's being completely honest with, hey, if a guy runs fast and he looks like fast on film, that's confirmation. If he doesn't have a fast time, but we think it looks like he plays fast, well, let's go back and reevaluate. Like, it's a confirmation. I don't want to have a GM. I don't want to be the Raiders who they just draft a guy because he's super fast.
I took out of it, he is going to draft the best player at 29 or wherever they trade up or down to. He is not going to fill needs in the draft. I mean, that's the one. I mean, he was very tight to the vest on a lot of what he said, and that's general managing in 2024 with the media cycle. But the one thing he was pretty definitive about is the needs will be filled in free agency more so than the draft. That if whatever you determine the need to be in that building, and this is another way of evaluating it, what he signs in free agency will be the biggest needs this team has in his mind. That's a way we can kind of get inside his head a little bit, is if he targets a corner in free agency, then that had to be one of the biggest needs or he wouldn't have done that. Because that's where he wants to fill the needs, is in free agency. The draft is for taking, as he put it, cornerstone players. And that might be running backs, tight ends, linebackers the way it was last year. It could be a safety. It could be a, quote, position you don't take in that spot. At 29, he's going to take the best player. There's no position for you if you're mock drafting to slot for the Lions at 29.
Well, and I think the blowback will be much less. Drafting at 29, a player that is best player available, and we all, and most everybody, you draft a running back at 12? You draft a linebacker at 18 or 19? And then you followed up with a tight end? Like all of those things last year, but it paid off. But that's not the point, is you start that at 29, best available. Now we can argue who is the best available.
Actually is, yeah.
But if you are taking the guy that you think is the best available, positional value means much less at 29 than it did at 12.
Okay, so the biggest needs this team has are what?
Well, it's corner, edge rusher,
interior offensive line.
Yeah.
Those are the spots we should expect to be addressed, some or all, in free agency then, which gives him the flexibility to do whatever the hell he damn well pleases with the 29th pick.
The Honolulu blueprint is coming to fruition.
Well, we're trying to get what we can get and read into what we can. But, I mean, the Combines this week, we're going to start getting more information on what teams. The other thing I was curious about is when I asked him about strengths and weaknesses, he wasn't comfortable addressing it just yet, because sometimes we hear most of the work is already done from watching these guys in the fall and then evaluating their tape in the fall. I'd always thought Combine and Pro Days are for maybe moving a guy up a couple spots or taking a guy off the board. But for the most part, I would have assumed they had their guys. It's clear there's just more that goes into it this time of year than maybe people give credit.
For some GMs. Yeah, because they have a whole lot of people that are telling them who they think they should draft. And then they're going to take the top 15, 20, 30 guys. They get 30 invites. They're going to take those guys and then evaluate themselves. I think for Brad Holmes, it's a hands-on type of evaluation. he's not just going to rely upon the room of scouts that say, hey, this offensive lineman, you should take a look at him at 29, or this defensive back. He is actually going to be much more hands-on than a lot of other general managers. So that list of guys is much larger that he's going to be looking at. And during the season, are we thinking, yeah, there's a certain amount of his day or week that is set aside for evaluating next year's crop of draft picks, but he's also running a football team. So that's all pushed back a little bit more.
You got a scouting department for a reason. Couple ticket texts, one in all caps. He's definitely not extending Goff after that answer. One of the first texts we got.
Playing this to a T. Playing this to a T.
Leverage. Another one says, Costa's hilarious. If Holmes was transparent and said what you want to hear, then he's Alavila and he's too honest. Oh, I want to ask questions and get answers. I mean, that's pretty basic human being 101. I get what he has to do and respect what he has to do, but it doesn't stop us asking and trying to glean the information for our own curiosity and for you guys. You guys want to know, what's the plan? Who are you signing? Danielle Hunter, yes or no? Blink twice. I mean, people want to know that stuff, and he told us what he would tell us. 248-539-9797. Court storming, is it going to go away? It had a moment this weekend in college basketball. We'll get to that next. 97.1.
Hey, your New Year's resolution was to lose weight, and now you know that you can get there faster than you think with Ideal U. Go to idealu.us now, and you could lose 20 pounds in just 30 days. Whether your resolution was to lose 10 or 100 or anywhere in between, Ideal U works, and it works fast. I lost 10 pounds in the first 10 days. I lost 60 pounds overall, and I've been able to keep it off. I'm well over 2 years into this process, the new me, and I have been able to keep off every single pound, and I got it to do it by eating real whole foods. It wasn't shakes or bars. Plus, you're going to get a weight loss coach that works with you every single step of the way. Your coach is going to help you lose weight and keep it off. Go to idealu.us now and sign up for a free body composition analysis. That's $150 value free. Here's what you're going to get. You're going to find out how much visceral fat percentage you have, water weight percentage, bone mass, muscle mass, all of that. But best of all, you're going to find out how easy it is to lose weight fast. Picture yourself 20 or 30 pounds lighter in just 30 days. Now's the time to make it happen. Go to idealu.us now. That's idealu.us.
If you missed Brad Holmes' Odyssey app, rewind 8:48 this morning. Gave us some of his thoughts. I know Karsh and Anderson are going to get all into it at 10 o'clock, too. Doug has got like a notepad back there. He's like, and then he said this, and it means... So they're going to get after it today when they come on at 10 o'clock. But just a couple things that stood out to me. He said that free agency is where they will target their needs more so than the draft. The draft, he wants to find cornerstones. I think that's not breaking news. That's how he handled last year's draft. He said in terms of this year's draft, too early to do strengths and weaknesses, too early to assign how many first-round grades there are. I know last year he said only 14, and that may have played into some of the decision-making that they had. Jared Goff, you asked him about it, John, and he used general manager speak. He said, out of respect for the player, nothing really firm.
Yeah, well, what he should have said was, out of respect for my job and the salary cap and the money that we're going to dole out to Jared Goff, I'm not going to say a damn word.
You know, he could have said, yeah, out of respect for his agent, who is definitely listening on the Odyssey app or in his car.
Yeah. I don't want him to have to use the rewind feature.
I said I don't want to read too much into it, but he didn't extend him last summer. I feel like he deserves an extension after this season. You said you think in a couple weeks to a month we'll have some clarity on that.
Some of it depends on how active they want to be in free agency. If they want to be active and they want to address some of those needs that he talked about, all right, and we know them. Edge, you could say even defensive tackle. Chris Jones, you could do both. It's corner. It's interior offensive lineman. All of those guys, there are players that are available to fill those needs. And now it's going to cost you. If you want the best guard out there, is it Robert Hunt? Is it Michael Onwenu? And then you move over Penei Sewell like I had in my blueprint. Like there's a lot of different options, and they all will cost a lot of money.
Cap's going up, though. They got a lot of space. His job to navigate it. John, big storyline over the weekend. Court storming. The Duke Blue Devils.
Oh, those poor Blue Devils.
And that's part of, I think, why the story got even more juice out of the weekend.
The Dukies.
That's right, the Dukies, and they are the victims here, of course. Court storming. They lost the game. Wake Forest fans spill out onto the court. Kyle Filipowski, ankle injury. He says it was intentional.
Excuse me, coming through. Do you know who I am? Get out of my way.
I'm the 7-foot white dude on Duke. Just stay clear. Give me my little protective bubble. I don't think it was intentional. I've seen all the angles, including the overhead view. Some people think he was shoving the Wake student. I think it was incidental contact.
Yeah.
And I don't like that a guy gets hurt or rolls an ankle or however serious his injury is. But the idea that they should ban court storming, that's what the Duke head coach Shire had to say. John, you played. How did you feel when people ran out onto the field, I guess?
Well, I knew if I didn't want them to rush the field, we should just win the game.
My man.
All right, so now that sounds easy, right? And that's what everybody would choose to do is don't lose. Don't lose on somebody else's field or court. But when it happens, because it inevitably is going to happen, all right, you are going to be a favored team. And I don't even care if you're favored or not. This was the number 8 team going to an unranked team. And it's a blue blood versus Wake Forest. All of a sudden, Wake Forest wins. They rush the field or the court. As a player, you know what is going to happen. So as soon as the final seconds tick off, you put your head on a swivel. You find your way to the bench. You find your way to the locker room. Now, it's unfortunate that this happened. And I don't condone in terms of, hey, if you're going to rush the court, let me see if I can hit Filipowski and make it look like I didn't. Like,
right.
I
don't do that.
There's no grand mastermind behind court storming. It's unfortunate. I wish he wouldn't have been hurt. I wish Caitlin Clark wouldn't have had a fan run into her earlier in the season. But it happens. You're talking about 2 times in the history of court storming. And there's been others. But
but recent memory.
Yeah, it's part of the fabric of college football, basketball, college athletics. This is the excitement that is generated. This is students, all right, that are going to class with these same students that just did something great. Let's go out there and celebrate with them.
Party and have a good time. It's fun. Was it an upset in the eyes of Vegas? No. And if you listen to Cash Ticket, you made some good money. But it is in the DNA of college basketball when a blue blood goes to an unranked place and lose. Those students aren't going, hold on, we can't rush. The odds makers actually made us 2.5 short home favorites. Nobody's thinking that. Yeah. They're having fun and enjoying the experience. You don't get upsets like that in pro sports because parity, salary cap, it's meant to keep everybody together. College basketball, you have 360 some odd schools. When someone has a moment, you celebrate, you have a good time. That's what it's all about. And does someone get injured here? I don't know how serious Filipowski is actually injured. And nobody likes that part of this, but the solution might be, rather than banning it, embracing it, like creating lanes for the players to get out and giving room for the fans to rush the floor.
Let's not overthink this. All right, it's happened many times before. And I would ask Shire the question, if you want to ban it, how are you going to do it? Like, what is your solution? Did you tell them no? Don't rush the floor. Don't rush the court.
You go out there and wag your finger at the fans.
Yes,
no.
Yes.
You're not allowed.
Do the Dikembe Mutombo. No.
We'll talk Red Wings hockey at 9:35, but first, Heather with the news.
So there's a video of Cam Newton that went viral over the weekend that shows him involved in a fight at a youth football tournament in Atlanta. Now, it's not clear yet, or if we'll ever know what actually started this scuffle, but Newton appears to be, basically jumped by
3 or 4 dudes.
Yeah, 3 or 4 guys. There's starts with some shoving, some grabbing, and then it turns pretty intense. Lots of punches thrown. Now, in the video, it appears that Newton is trying to defend himself. I mean, he's trying to get these guys off of him. It doesn't appear that he actually threw any of the punches.
Or was the aggressor,
At least from what we saw in the clip that was online. Ultimately, it ended up being broken up by police and security guards, and everybody involved, including Newton, were removed from this event. It's a pretty crazy video, though.
It is wild.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to mess with Cam Newton either.
No. A charity basketball game.
Quarterback.
To honor.
He's not your average quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, just pull that hat over his head. Pull it down over his face.
Yes,
we'll be able to see
that
you.
Hat. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. A charity basketball game to honor a Metro Detroit teen who was killed in a drive-by shooting last summer was canceled after the venue reported threats, obviously making the event unsafe for everybody involved. So it was planned for the Wayne State Fieldhouse on Sunday afternoon. It was organized by the teen's parents, who have also since started a nonprofit in his name. And due to the cancellation, Wayne State announced that they would donate $10,000 to the foundation, obviously, instead of hosting this event. They said that these threats were targeting spectators and were also targeting the organizers of this event. So obviously, better safe than sorry. Former NFL cornerback and analyst for Amazon Prime, Richard Sherman, was arrested on Saturday morning for suspicion of drunk driving. So he was pulled over. He was going 79 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone. And officers said that they noticed right away the odor of intoxicants. They said his eyes were bloodshot and watery. When they asked him if he had anything to drink, he did say, yes, I had 2 margaritas. He did, according to what I read, say no to the breathalyzer, but did some field sobriety tests. Anyway, he should be in court today to find out what's next. Now, this is his second arrest since his playing career ended, which was in 2021. So in 2022, he pleaded guilty to second-degree criminal trespassing, speeding in a construction zone, and first-degree negligent driving.
Yeah. That was the same incident where he was... I think the criminal trespassing was pounding on his in-law's door.
Yes, it was.
Beating the hell out of that.
Yep. A stamp honoring longtime UCLA head coach John Wooden was unveiled on Saturday at the university's campus. You can check it out. The stamp shows Wooden with two players in the background. One's wearing the number 4, one's wearing the number 10. Those represent the number of undefeated seasons and the number of national championships he won with the team. So it's pretty cool. He is only the second college basketball coach to be honored with a U.S. stamp.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. He's the standard. I mean,
it's pretty cool. All right, though, there's a 36-year-old woman. She just lost out on a huge injury settlement after she won a Christmas tree throwing contest.
I'm sorry, what?
A Christmas tree throwing contest.
As one does.
Yes. Though this woman is from Ireland, so maybe that's something they do in Ireland
big
after
sport
the
out there, yeah.
holiday season. So she was in a car accident 7 years ago. She was rear-ended. She filed a personal injury lawsuit for $825,000. She claimed that she was left with this disabling condition. She was constantly in pain, neck pain, back pain. She couldn't work, right? She couldn't play with her kids. She couldn't do anything. Couldn't even take out the trash, is what she said. Mm-hmm. And the case has been tied up for quite a while, different delays. And recently, the court was shown a newspaper photo from 2018. And in the photo, it shows her heaving this massive Christmas tree. And she ultimately was the winner of that contest.
Oh.
And the judge decided to throw out the case.
Throw her out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Done in by a classic Christmas tree throwing contest. Who among us hasn't been involved in one? That's Heather.
Need some
with the
stats
news.
on that. How big was the tree and how far did she throw it?
We need some of these details, Heather.
I mean, I'll look into it.
Oh. Top priority.
Yes.
It's 97.1. That's Patrick Kane. Who else would it be? Story of last night. OT winner, John. They find a way. They didn't deserve to win that game. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. I mean, we talked about it last year. There were times where, hey, you thought that they deserved to win, and they lost.
No kidding.
It just this year there's just something. There's something different. There's something better, and there's a lot of people that have obviously opinions on it as to why that is. And I think it's Patrick Kane. It's his ability and his experience. It's Alex DeBrincat. It's all of these guys that have brought that. I don't want to at edge, the depth that this team has. 4 lines, and they could score. Any of them could score. You never know who's going to have the hot hand.
They are on fire right now, to where even when they're not playing their best, they still, quote, find a way to win. I mean, Saturday they jumped out early. Game was over 5 minutes in. Blues are blowing a timeout. Didn't really matter. 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. Ugly. It's over within the first period. And then even when they don't play their best, they got to travel back-to-back into listen, it's not a good Blackhawks team, but a team that had an amped crowd, right?
Yeah.
They were excited to honor Chris Chelios. Patrick Kane's back in the building. It might be the best crowd they have all season. And the Wings are coming in off a back-to-back, riding high off a win, and they found a way. I mean, the DeBrincat throws a puck at the net, gets kind of a cheapie, ties it up, you win it in OT. And it's Kane, and it's DeBrincat, and it's Kane. The Cat had 3 goals this weekend. I give him the biggest slice of credit at this point because he picked Detroit before it was cool, before the playoffs were a real thing here. He had to navigate himself out of a contract in Ottawa and into Detroit. He may have been able to make more money if he didn't make Detroit the priority. He wanted to be here. He grew up here. And it's kind of fun to experience because when he was growing up, he was watching this, and now he gets to lead the charge. He's second on the team in points. Before Kane even showed up, he had a point per game, 24 points, 24 games. And I think it's in large part he's here. Kane is here because DeBrincat is here. I mean, he's the guy finishing these chances. He is their best, quote, pure goal scorer. And it brought Kane aboard, who is so gifted.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. They got him for it's less than $3 million on a 1-year prove-it deal. And now it feels like he's proven that he's back, and it's only a matter of time before they work out some kind of extension with him. I think that was the reporting from Emily Kaplan of ESPN. Perron and Kane expect extensions either before the end of this season or early into the offseason. The idea that you can keep these veterans who are going to be part of a postseason push.
Well, and we've wanted to have lottery luck. If you don't have lottery luck, what's going to happen? Because the Wings have not had it. They haven't had anything but. You've got to you still have to find a way to get better and become a playoff team. You have to find a way to get some superstars. And is Kane in the prime of his superstar career? No, but he's still a damn good player. He could still help all of those players around him. Lucas Raymond, do we hope he continues to get better? Yeah. Mo Sider, same thing, different position, but you're hoping that the mentality is what pays off.
So Lucas Raymond is an underrated story. I mean, he's having a really nice third year in the NHL. And last year he was on the top line with Larkin, and he kind of took a step back, and he's on the second line now, and he's more of a driving force on that line. And he doesn't have to be counted on as a number 1 option, although he is developing into a fine one in his own right. It's Sprong, who they brought in free agency. He can be a third or a fourth liner. He scores a goal last night. And it's throwing 4 lines at the opposition. It's what Seattle did last year as an underdog to pull off an upset in the first round against Colorado. Sprong was on that team. It's what Vegas, on a bigger picture scale, did to win the Stanley Cup. They didn't have a truly transcendent McDavid, McKinnon player in the middle of the ice, but they rolled lines, they played defense, they scored when they needed to, and they got unreal goalie play. That's the last missing ingredient, and I feel like Alex Lyon, at least since the flip to the new year, has been that missing ingredient in net.
Well, he's been able to fill that hole. For lack of a better term, it was a hole, and now all of a sudden you have that ability to go out there and have the confidence in a goalie, not just now, but getting into the playoffs, getting into and hopefully maybe a win in the first round, maybe a win in the second round.
John, I asked you to start last week. It was a week ago. I said, can we christen this a playoff race? Because I like to get ahead of myself, and you said yes. Can I start asking who we want to play in the first round, or is it too early? 24 games to go.
No, we can have that conversation. Who the hell cares? Let's talk about it.
All right, I want the Bruins.
Yeah, why not start with one of the teams that over the last couple of years has been the best in the regular season?
Bring on the Chowderheads. Give me the Bruins from Beantown. Wings went 2-2 in the regular season against Boston. I'd much rather play them than the Rangers, who are red hot, or Florida, who went to the Stanley Cup last year. The point is, these are more fun than can they hold off the Islanders or the Capitals. They'll play both this week, put the pedal to the metal, and get it done. I like that we can start talking about 7-game series chess match. Oh, Boston's got 2 goalies. Yeah, but they're not as deep as the Red Wings are. They got last year in the first round.
They're also not
24 games. We're close.
Right, and they're also not a team that's, at this point, 20 points better.
No.
Like they're a team right now that's 11 points the better of the Red Wings. And the Red Wings going into the weekend were right in the middle, right? They were 6 behind Toronto for that number 3 spot. They were 6 ahead of the cut line. Now they're 8 ahead of the cut line, and they've trimmed it to 4 behind Toronto. They're not that far back.
What's the biggest reason things have turned around? That this season's a breakthrough season, that it's not hoping but believing that they're a playoff team that can do damage. 248-539-9797. Texter says it's putting NHL quality players around Larkin. Look how much better he looks and the teams look when he isn't the only guy out there driving play. It's a good note. I think people's perception of Larkin has changed as he's gotten better support around him.
Yeah, I mean,
last year it was, right?
Yeah, should we even sign him?
Which seems silly. And I don't know how serious it was that he wouldn't be back, but it did invite the conversation. And there were plenty of critics here in Hockeytown going, he's not a number 1 center. I don't know, like you can pay him 8.7, nearly 9 a year. I don't think anybody's regretting that deal today. 248-539-9797. Some more response to what the Red Wings have done. We have court storming response as well on the ticket texter. Says if court storming is still needed in college sports, then let's get rid of the handshake line and wait for opposing players to leave the court until the storming is over. Says it's dangerous, not just for the players, but fellow students who could get trampled. Says I don't think it's a good idea.
Sure, yeah. You could put a bubble around you, too, and walk around downtown. You could try and remove all risks from your life. Then, if that's the case, then don't go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. More ticket texters. You guys making this about Duke is pathetic. If Caitlin Clark broke her ankle, the court storming would have been banned already.
Whoa. Nobody's saying he broke his ankle. Is there a news report out this morning that he's done for the year? His career is over?
Sprain, I think, is what we were told. And who even knows how much time he misses, if any.
Yeah.
Not to minimize. We don't want anybody getting hurt on a court storming, but none of it was malicious. He thinks he was targeted. He thinks there's some Wake Forest fan. He's like, I'm going to find him and take him out. That fan's just celebrating because his team won. That's all that was.
Yeah, it wasn't a shot at Filipowski.
Not at all. Couple notes on the Red Wings as we approach the trade deadline. Some of the news and notes. Jeff Merrick, Sportsnet. Quote, we suspect the Red Wings are looking for a forward, but don't be surprised to see them try and pick up a defenseman with, quote, bite. The Wings may have a lot of blue liners, but they don't have anyone who's, quote, smelly, parentheses, hard to play against. John, they need a smelly hockey player.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask most people, hockey players are really stinky.
You got a kid who plays hockey, go take a whiff of the hockey pads. Yeah, no kidding.
You know what? Can they add at the deadline? It's, 10, 11 days away?
Week from Friday.
Sure. Do they have to? No. I mean, let me ask you this. In terms of response to that, will you be disappointed if there is nothing done at the trade deadline?
A little bit. Because I think this team is proving to be more than just a team that gets in the playoffs. Does that make sense? Like, they're starting to get this vibe around them. And if they win a couple more before the deadline and really start to solidify themselves as a team that could go on a run, then don't you owe it to that team to at least inquire about some smelly blue liners?
Okay, so if that's the case, I mean, sports are different. I get that. We were upset that the Lions didn't.
Yep.
Yet they still got the NFC Championship game.
You can still do it.
I mean, can they get to the semifinals without adding a defenseman or a smelly player?
So they've got a bunch of guys who, I mean, like Petrie, you could probably replace on the second pair if you're looking at the deadline. Could he hold his own? Fine. Sherratt has stepped up. I think that's been a big key lately. So you're not just top heavy with the top pair, but beyond that, Gostisbehere is an offensive defenseman, and I don't know that you want to have him on a line unless you have a good anchor next to him. I think Chris Tanev is a name that's going to get floated out there, 34 years old, shot blocker, Ultimate Warrior, playoff hockey player at the price. Calgary asking for a first, probably a little too steep. The Flyers have this Sealer guy, leads the NHL or among the leaders in blocked shots. That kind of guy maybe makes sense on a third pair if the Flyers, although they're a playoff team, he's an expiring. Those are the conversations Yzerman's probably going to have. And then there's also some bigger swings. So on that same note about, rumors and reports and what the Red Wings could do, Elliot Friedman, who does the 32 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick, he suggested the Pittsburgh Penguins forward Jake Gensel would be a good fit in Detroit, provided a contract extension is part of it. He shared a bunch of caveats saying, I'm just spitballing and they have other extensions they have to make. But Gensel's a guy who scored 40 goals before in Pittsburgh. They are slowly drifting out of the playoff race. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's done for the season. I think it was a 4-week injury that he's about 10 days into. That would be a way to get even more scoring punch. No one's going to complain, but I think defense is where most people would point to for the Red Wings if they're going to make any move at the deadline. What do you want to see from this hockey team, and what are you seeing? What's the biggest reason things have turned around? It's 97-1. Storybook. Patrick Kane in Chicago, first time back on a new team.
It's following the NHL script.
There you go. He had the A on, too. They let him wear the alternate captain spot. Wings had his back. He delivered. Another win, 5 straight for the Red Wings. Everything's going well right now. Stars are starring. Role players are role-playing. They're a deep hockey team, and they're even playing well on defense, and they've got good goalie play.
Yeah.
Yes, he has, John.
Okay.
Matt, you're next up. You're on 97.1.
Hey, good morning. I was thinking that the Wings should go after Jordan Eberle. I think he'd just bring that veteran presence, and I think he'd work really well with that probably third line. And I wouldn't be surprised if Stevie Y pulls off a little bit of his magic and tries to get a trade for Stamkos somehow.
I'd be stunned. I mean, they're in the playoff picture too in Tampa, and I think they're probably of the belief that once they get in,
they know that they're on the tail end.
They are
of Stamkos' career, and if I remember correctly, Yzerman and Stamkos had a really good connection. So I'm just saying, obviously it's a shot in the stars, and I hope it happens. But I for sure think Jordan Eberle is going to be a part of this team in the near future.
Well, we could talk about both these guys. The first thing I Googled Stamkos' contract. First thing that comes up, won't be moved prior to the deadline, according to the Lightning general manager. He spent his whole career there. I don't think he's going to end up somewhere else in season while they're still chasing a Stanley Cup. Eberle, to me, feels kind of redundant with Sprong. Eberle's out in Seattle, same deal, third liner, winger, shooter, scorer. You can, I guess, in theory, never have enough, but they seem to already be pretty deep there. I don't know if you want to give up picks or prospects for third line shooting.
Yeah. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at his I don't even know what his contract is, how long he'd be under contract. But that's the thing. If they're going to go out, they can add more is always better. I'll start with that. But I would much prefer that they go out and they find more defense.
Eberle on the last year of a deal would be a rental, would be the piece for a cup contender or a playoff team to add. I think the two type of moves they would make would either be somebody for the blue line to help make sure that holds up, or if there's someone they can get long-term. If there's someone who's expiring that would sign a long-term extension, or if there's a player out there that's got a couple years of term that Yzerman feels like could be part of this long-term, not just this year, but the years to come, then I think he'd be willing to part ways, or more willing to part ways with some of the pieces down in Grand Rapids or the draft picks that you're not going to hit on all of them anyway. So I think those will be some of the decisions to make, but that's a week from Friday, and there's talk about Jonathan Berggren, who's playing well for Grand Rapids, doesn't really have a home in Detroit. There's not really a spot for him. Does that end up being a pretty nice trade chip? I think that's part of what happens when you start winning and you have a robust farm system. When it comes to buying at the deadline, you show up and you whip out your wallet. Your wallet, John.
Yes.
You slap that on the table and you're ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you have things to deal and you have equity, you can. What are you looking at?
John, it's what we worried about. When we walked in at 6 o'clock today, you already know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Gator made a look. It's not us. It's not our fault.
Yeah, every time somebody walks by the studio, they think it's us.
Well, first of all, don't point. It's impolite.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second of all, I appreciate that you recognize that there's a mess and it was made by somebody else.
Goldfish cracker dust all over the floor.
We need to call somebody out. Who did it?
It had to be from last night. We can go check the schedule.
Well, it wasn't here when we left at 10 a.m. on Friday.
Wasn't there when we left at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, the
Mike
process
Enrico?
of elimination has happened.
Yes.
Could be Mike Enrico.
Yeah.
Wojo, Rieger.
Do Goldfish fit the new diet plan that Rico has been on? I don't know.
Maybe it's not him.
I think right everybody's diet plan, frankly. Goldfish are delicious.
Goldfish. Not a huge fan.
No?
Maybe I'm just goldfished out because of always putting it in the kids' lunches.
But you can get they do the value packs now, John, where you can get different
I know
types.
You love that
value. They do little pretzel goldfish. Have you had those, Gator?
I've had, I think, all the goldfish at one point.
Okay.
Actual, real live goldfish, too.
Never eaten a goldfish.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Yeah, not even in your college days?
Like,
John, you say that as though like everybody's had a goldfish phase.
I wasn't a fraternity guy, so I
Well, it didn't have to be a
Did
fraternity.
you-
I was never
well,
a fraternity
there's no
guy.
point
I've
in
had a
you.
few. I've had a handful.
You've
of
eaten
goldfish.
like
a
live
handful
a
of
handful of goldfish?
Yeah, I mean,
like
well,
not crackers,
I don't
Doug.
know, yeah.
Fish.
Were they
Handful.
live?
I mean,
They
what
were,
we talking about for a handful? Yeah.
think they're still swimming around in there? Or?
No, I think I've ejected them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you look for them?
I don't
You
know.
puke them back up, right?
No, the ejection came out the other way.
Only 2 ways out.
Here we go.
Doug's like, what did I walk into?
Yeah, I might walk out.
I mean, you got to be looking for the exit, right? I mean, that thing goes in. You want to make sure it goes out.
Heather, it's been a fun show.
Yeah.
We're going to head out of
Yeah.
here. Doug, what do you have coming up?
I don't think it's still there. So
I'm sure it's not, but I'm just asking about back. You had to,
You won't let it go, Doug.
I'm good. What do you got?
We will review the best of what Brad Holmes told you guys and trade deadline predictions for the Red Wings all coming up.
Carson Anderson, 97.1.
Doug Carr, Scott Anderson, hello, and welcome to the program here on 97.1 The Ticket. Hope you had a great weekend. Gator, did you have a great weekend?
It was fine, and then watched the game yesterday with the Red Wings. It was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Went from fine to fantastic last night.
Well, it went from fine to not so fine with Michigan State, and then the Red Wings just changed everything around, turned frowns upside down. What a fantastic finish. That's storybook stuff right there. That stuff, Doug, that is something that probably goes down in a tome of some kind.
Do you think?
I think so. You got to write that down. Write it down. You were if you watched it. Remember where you were that night.
Really?
No, but it was pretty good.
Okay, I was about to say.
Well, I mean, the fact that they're honoring Chris Chelios with the pregame ceremony, retiring his jersey in Chicago, which is great. He's a Chicago native. It's great. We had Chelly here for, I think, just as long as he was in Chicago. A great guy. A lot of fun to be around. He's always been talkative and friendly, and he was funny in his speech and stuff, and talking directly to Patrick Kane and carrying the torch of the the greatest ever U.S. born player and stuff. And he said, "Hey, stick around, kid. You're going to get one of these too." And it was great. And then the game comes along, and the crowd is there to also honor Patrick Kane, his return to Chicago since he left. And you'd think it's going to be awkward because he's wearing a wing wheel. And Chicago and Detroit have had a serious rivalry since the original 6 days. Maybe it's not as big now because they're in opposite conferences and the teams are in, they're not as competitive as they once were, but it's still Detroit, Chicago, and you hear the Detroit sucks chants and all that, and we call Chicago the city of the blows or whatever. But the respect that the fans showed was tremendous for Patrick Kane. And, he gets onto the ice, and there's the television break in the first period. The crowd they showed this video on screen, and fortunately they showed it on TV for us as well. And it was really well done. And Kane is out there watching the whole thing. And then it ends, and the crowd gives him a 2-minute standing ovation. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I thought it was just great. And I figured that's it. That's the end, right? And then, of course, you get he sets up the game tying goal, which could not have been at a worse angle. I'm still not sure how DeBrincat scored that goal. And then you get to overtime, and you heard the Ken Cal cut. If you watched the game, you heard the Ken Daniels commentary on it with Mickey Redmond there. It's just I want to hear it in every language, and I want to hear it by every announcer because it was storybook. You just don't expect to see that in that situation, and it was great. It really was.
Well,
hair stood up on my arm.
Important 2 points for the Red Wings, who are sending a message coming out of the All-Star break, winning 6 of 8. Now, they've done 4 of their 6 wins come in overtime, and I always caution that the overtime win in the regular season isn't indicative of postseason success because it's a completely different animal. But, going to the 3-on-3, but still, you take the points and you move on, and 2 points is better than 1 point once you get to overtime. And yeah, Patrick Kane has won. He won the Avalanche game last week late with that goal and the great setup from Dylan Larkin, and then this one, both in OT. So you take all these people off the ice, and Red Wings are really good. I wish it was a predictor of postseason success, but it isn't. So.
Well, they're playing really well right now. Is it 5 in a row or something? And the other thing that was great about the goal, he scores it against former Red Wing Peter Mrazek. It's assisted by former Blackhawk Alex DeBrincat. It just all these great tie-ins.
Well, you have to wonder if it's going to shift Steve Yzerman's approach to the trade deadline, which is on the agenda today. It was interesting. I was reading a national writer about
a Gord?
it.
Was it a Gord?
It was not a Gord. It was a female who was writing about the trade deadlines. All right, we have a joke. If the website ends in .ca or the writer is named Gord, it is a credible NHL source.
Reliable.
But anyway, no, it was no Gord, nor was it a .ca. But
Okay.
it was an approach to the trade deadline that kind of surprised me. One insider makes a prediction about what the Red Wings are going to do at the trade deadline, so we will get into that. You mentioned out of the gate the Spartan loss probably doesn't affect them in terms of making the NCAA tournament, but they can't afford too many more like this.
No, it's
strong,
definitely affecting seeding, though.
It's affecting seeding. It might just mean the color of shirt they wear because you get in that 7-10, 8-9 game. Those are all pretty much like teams. It just matters who's the home team and who's the road team. The advantage of being the 10 over the 9 is that you play a 2 seed in the second round if you win instead of a 1 seed, but you have a slightly tougher, in theory, game in the first round. But they can't afford too many of those. Michigan, another loss. They're just stacking up, and everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens with Juwan Howard there. Other than that, well, the combine starts today, and Brad Holmes spoke to the morning show. Some very pointed and interesting questions from the guys. Today, I believe it's defensive linemen and linebackers that come in and get the medicals and start the interview, all the off-field stuff. It feels as though, I can't speak for every organization, but it feels as though what we won't see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which is the off-the-field interview stuff, the 20 minutes that prospects can spend with each team that they're invited to speak to, it feels as though these 20 minutes, these behind the scenes, behind closed doors, we don't see it until later, 20 minutes, is used by this Lions organization in, I would argue, more effective ways than any previous Lions regime, and maybe more effective than everybody else in the league. This might be the most important part of the pre-draft process, is when the Lions get to know these players and then can figure out which guys, start to figure out which guys are wired the way they want. And so it's really weird because this could be the most critical part, and yet we'll have no idea how it's going, what they're looking for, what their formula is. It's just happening right now.
I think it definitely obviously works for them. In 3 drafts. They've done very well in 3 drafts. And why change it? Keep preparing the way you do. Keep bringing the coaching staff out to the combine. I'm surprised that each year it seems like there's more and more coaches that are going to be vocal and say, I'm not going. And to see the list of guys, of head coaches that say, I don't need to be there, it's a waste of my time. Guys like Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur is on that list now. And Robert Saleh, McCarthy in Dallas is another one of those guys. And maybe Kyle Shanahan even. He's rumored to perhaps he's not going to be there this week. I'm amazed. You guys don't want to spend the time to be there with the one-on-one interviews. And they're like, well, it all can be done remotely. Well, isn't that just fantastic? Let's take the whole personality out of it. You know what, though? You guys do you. That's great. I love that our coaches are there and that our GM is there and that they value these interviews enough to be there in person. I think it's fantastic.
It's really interesting. Like, I don't know that – I don't want to overstate that our crew, our leadership here in Detroit has perfected the art form, because there are mistakes that are made. But having success in the draft, you can't really debate it. The Lions have done it. And I'm imagine if Brad Holmes is the GM here for the next 2 decades, there'll be some bad drafts mixed in as well. It's an inexact science. But I also feel like, hey, man, we've learned a lot in terms of how these guys operate. I want everybody that's in a decision-making role sitting in on these interviews. We never talked about the interviews until Holmes and Campbell came along. And maybe this is maybe we would have had the Lions previously put out Inside the Den and shown how these interviews went. And, for people who don't know what Inside the Den is, that is their YouTube show that they put out after the draft, where they will flash back to the player interviews, and you can see why they took Jack Campbell or see why they took Jahmyr Gibbs, because they'll show highlights from these interviews.
Yeah, and then they'll show highlights of when the players come to Allen Park and if they're there to meet with the fans and stuff like that. It's really great insight into what goes on there. I think it's great. And again, I think it speaks, you go back to this combine. And I think it's important that they're there face to face with these players. You can gauge plenty on through a Zoom chat. You can. But you can't gain as much as what you would if you're in the room with the person. There's a different kind of energy there. And maybe the person's even more excited that you're there, or perhaps more nervous, and you're going to find some stuff out like, this guy is not the guy we want. He's not handling the situation well. And that's why, hey, I love what we're doing, what the Lions are doing. You want to go ahead and be that way, McVay, go ahead and be that way. You want to be that way, Robert Saleh, go ahead and spend another year not making the playoffs. I don't care. Our guy does it.
I can't believe I'm mentioning this, but I think it's important for the Lions brass to see the nonverbal cues. Mondays mean Champ and Chump. Get your Champ and Chump votes in. Who had the best weekend? Who should be called out for having a weekend that stinks? We'll have our nominations today at 10:35. It's Carson Anderson. Open lines to get us going. We'll have plenty of recap of what Brad Holmes had to say to the morning show. We like to pull highlights. Also, preview of the trade deadline, which is getting more and more interesting as the Red Wings are putting themselves in a very advantageous position just to make the playoffs and, dare we say, make a run in the playoffs. Boy, if you watch the ABC coverage on Saturday, they are expecting just that. It is Karsh and Anderson here on a Monday, 97.1 The Ticket.
Well, weather is a fickle thing. It's hot one day, it's cold the next day. Winter's not done with us yet. We know there's spring is right around the corner. Make sure your house is prepared. Call Birmingham Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling because they know what it takes to keep your home comfortable all year long. And they're offering a deal right now where you can replace a clunky water heater with a tankless one for free with the purchase of a Comfort Maker furnace and air conditioning package. Now, Birmingham's got over 100 years of combined experience. They're the team that I trust. I had a water heater and went kaput on me. They came out and replaced it the next day. I had a problem with the thermostat. They came out the next day and fixed it. Visit them at birminghamplumbingco.com. That's BirminghamPlumbingCO.com.
Doug Karsh alongside Scott Anderson. It is the Karsh and Anderson program here on 97.1 The Ticket. Reminder, you can stream the show through the Odyssey app. Download it for your mobile device today, AUDACY. You can listen back to any portion of the show with the rewind feature. It's all archived up to 24 hours. Additionally, you can stream to our website, 971theticket.com, where tomorrow we'll post the Champ and Chump of the weekend. We take your votes right now for Champ and Chump, who had the best weekend, who called out for having a weekend that stunk. We'll get to our votes today at 10:35. Also stream with video. Go to twitch.tv, search up 971 The Ticket, and you can stream with video on youtube.com. So go to youtube.com. Again, search up 971 The Ticket. They have you can chat there as well. Sometimes we grab stuff off the chat and use it on the air. So you never know. Never know. But, all right, so let's get into Brad Holmes' morning show appearance here a little bit. We'll get to some Red Wing stuff a little bit later on. But Combine, as we mentioned, medicals and off-the-field stuff start today. Defensive linemen and linebackers. Brad Holmes is down there, Lions GM. And we've had this big debate about their approach to the draft. Do they change their approach to the draft, which has been a pretty staunch commitment to best player available, position be damned. They've made that clear. because Brad Holmes has done some things that, like taking a running back with their first pick last year. He didn't care about the standard operating procedure the teams have that running backs aren't worth it. By taking a linebacker that's kind of an off the ball guy, not a edge rush sort of linebacker. They do their own thing. And we've heard him say a lot, we just go find football players. I just want football players. So does he change that approach? Because, hey, man, you got football players all over the place, but you have some screaming needs, and this team's trying to win a Super Bowl. Here's what Brad Holmes told the morning show. I mean, it goes back to, I guess he hasn't wavered from the philosophy. He's going to take the football player and try to maybe get into needs a little bit more in free agency. Now, he talked about free agency a little bit later on, but that doesn't sound like a guy who's getting set to change his philosophy.
No, and nor should he, because he's been successful building this team to where it is right now, doing what he's done. I think there's going to be some tweaks to it, but you look at, when he talked about recency bias, absolutely, of course. We're looking at the team right now, and you see the pending free agents on this team, and are you going to fill this hole or not? And everybody's looking at that, and it will change because, as you said, of free agency. And I think even the guys addressed that right after that. The comment, well, I mean, the needs will change, mock drafts will change because you'll fill some of those needs with free agents. But with free agency, what you get over the draft is known commodities. You get guys that have played in the league. You already know whether or not they can perform at the highest level, as opposed to, projecting that they can do it based on interviews and film from college. There's a big difference with the certainty of the player you're getting in free agency versus the certainty of the player you're getting through the draft. But they're both obviously very important to building this team.
I feel like Brad Holmes has his roster laid out. And and again, this is my interpretation of how this man wants to operate. He's got his 53-man in mind. Like in the offseason, you can have up to 90 guys under contract. And I feel like if he sees a guy who's like the 49th man on the 53-man roster, it says, wait a sec. I can get better at that 49th spot with using this draft pick to get better at spot 49. He's going to do it.
Yeah.
Like even if we get excited about the top of the roster, wow, Chris Jones, would Chris Jones fit it? How would, or hey, they need a defensive end, right? They need another defensive end. I think Brad Holmes looks at the 53, 1 to 53, and says, can I get better at 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 53? And if he can get better with a guy at 53, he's going to take a guy that gets him better at 53. And that might seem silly, but every time he talks, I think he's trying to get better at 53 as much as he is trying to get better at 1.
I think if you were to look at this roster and like the roster he took over and the roster where it is now, and you see from numbers like 35 to 53, how much better that part of the roster has gotten to the point now where you're like, the team has depth. They've got legitimate depth because these guys from 53 to 35 or 35 to 53 are just flat out better than what they were a few years ago. You're still going to need the high-end talent, and the Lions they're starting to accumulate some of that high-end talent. But you really start to take off when the bottom of your roster is filled by guys that would be part of any team's roster in the NFL. That you're no longer reaching to get guys that are, off, I don't want to say the scrap heap, but guys that haven't played in a long time or somebody else's practice squad and like, oh, we're so devastated. We have to go here and try to identify. And the Lions had done that, and they'd gotten results because the coaching staff was able to get these guys coached up. But over the last couple of years, they've been able to upgrade those guys with players that make sense because it's just better depth.
And it's funny, you mentioned cycling through guys off the scrap heap, for lack of a better term, which feels like the bottom 100 players in the NBA right now, 20 to 30 of them have been cycled through as Pistons. But, there are probably guys that we would have put 35 to 53 or 30 to 53 that started to make plays for them down the stretch. Like a Fatu Melifonwu probably worked his way from 35 to 53 into the top 30. Josh Paschal, guys that started to really, really show. And, again, you want to get better everywhere. But I just think that you keep hearing it from him. Depth, depth, depth. I almost feel like rather than get Chris Jones, he'd rather get 3 guys that help him get better with the depth than just the one.
Well, here's an example. A couple years ago, they draft Malcolm Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the team as a rookie and flashes a bit, and he gets to play a lot as a rookie. And, maybe he's, rushed into – on the player rankings, let's say he's number 35 on the roster, right? You got to have him. The next year, they go out and they get Jack Campbell.
Yep.
And what it does is it knocks a guy who was 35, but now he gets pushed down to maybe he's 45 on the list. But he's a very good special teams player, plays a role on the team on defense when they need him to spell the other guys, if there's an injury or whatever. But that's the kind of thing that's going on.
What
is they're developing the guys in the bottom end of the roster doesn't look like a bottom end of a typical football team. It looks like competency.
I feel like a guy like Brad Holmes would also say, I got the best damn 45th man on my roster in the NFL.
I mean, it does mean something.
248-539-9797. All right, we'll get to more of what the Lions GM had to tell the morning show. We also have our Champ and Chump nominations today at 10:35, and votes are starting to roll in. So we'll get to some of what you have on the Champ and Chump votes. It's Carson Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket. Doug Karsh, Scott Anderson, Kang behind the glass, Kenny answering phones, and let's get to your phone calls. Jim, you're on 97.1 The Ticket. Hi, Jim.
Hey, I got a question. I heard you guys mention Chris Jones.
Yep.
Is he available? Because if he is, that would be it. That would be the missing link.
Okay, well, a couple things. He's not available yet. He's a free agent to be. The belief is that Kansas City, they've got L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones, two elite guys that would get big money on the open market. They can only franchise one of them or bring back one of them, and probably it feels like the speculation is that Jones is the more likely to hit the open market.
Too bad.
You just what's that? Too bad.
Too bad.
Well, if he's open in the open market and you want him, it's the opposite. If you want him and he's on the open market, that's the opposite of too bad. That's exactly what you want.
Oh no, I mean too bad if they franchise him, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't suspect that they will. That's one. The part that for you, if you really want him, that's too bad is Brad Holmes doesn't seem to believe in the missing link. Yeah, I'm assuming you didn't hear his entire interview this morning. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Yeah. When they guys brought up about going and getting a Chris Jones to put you over the top, he's not a believer in being one player away.
How about you?
I'm starting to buy into almost everything Brad Holmes says, which is foolish. But I like when he starts talking about this stuff. I'm like, well, it makes sense. And
he hasn't
everything
been wrong much.
No, he hasn't been. We'll play that soundbite for you. It's on our to-do list here. But I mean, you heard it.
They got a lot more. I did hear it. And look, I think that there's some gamesmanship going on. He's not going to say everything. You're not going to totally understand what it is that he's doing because there are different circumstances this year. You can have going into it the same philosophy you've always had, and why change that? But it's circumstantial and situational. This team is not the same team that he's trying to add and build with that he had a few years ago. Right? There are much fewer holes on this team now than there were a few years ago. We talk about building the roster and having it being solid all the way to 53. And yeah, you're going to find guys that are going to be an upgrade over what you have at player 48 or 47 or whatever. But you're also not going to ignore the ways to improve in the top 10 of your roster.
It's funny because after listening to this morning, I don't believe any of what you just said. I mean, I know you always like to say smokescreen, and after listening to him this morning, I think he's selling it so hard. I truly believe that's exactly what he thinks.
Yeah. Well, I think there's I think when they add $13 million more to the salary cap than anybody was expecting, I think it starts to change perhaps what your vision is. He
kind of addressed that, and we'll play it for you coming up. But the one thing about the $13 million that I always try and put the relevance is does it matter if everybody gets the same $13 million? Because everybody got it, not just the Lions.
Right, but the Lions already had a bunch of cap space.
They did have a bunch.
So obviously this adds to everybody's. But I think what this does is, and it also gives you insight into the future of what the salary cap is going to do every year, how it's going to go up, is that maybe what this, and I do agree with the whole re-sign your own guys, all right? Because they have a core group of players that you're going to want to bring back, including Aleem McNeil and Amon-Ra St. Brown this offseason. And maybe it's simply that the money is so much easier to extend both of those guys real quick and then move on, but they still have a ton of money to spend, and they're going to need to spend money.
So tell me if I'm wrong on this. Let's say as far as the cap space is concerned, and why it feels like a big deal, but I'm not sure it is. If you, Kang, and I are all looking at buying the same house, we all go walking through, realtor puts it through, and the house costs $500,000, whatever it might be. And then we, we all get a bonus check of $10,000 that adds to our bonus. But the three of us are bidding on the same house. If we all got the same bonus, it feels like, hey, I got $10,000 I can commit to my bid. But so do you and so do Kang. It still comes down to who wants it the most.
Yeah, but our circumstances would be different. Maybe Kang doesn't need to fix up the kitchen in the house. Maybe you don't need that the 3-car garage, or maybe I didn't need to get an acre of land. I mean, everybody's going to have their own things that they're looking at to build. Yeah, you have the money. It's how you want to spend the money.
It's who wants the player the most, that you're going after, everybody now has more resources to go after players.
Yeah, but now everybody might also have more resources to just re-sign their own guys as opposed to going into that market.
Well, that goes back to, again, who wants them most. If I'd rather have Chris Jones than Jonah Jackson and extend Jared Goff, then that becomes a possibility. Let's go to Mike. You're next on 97.1 The Ticket. Hi, Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Okay.
Hello?
Yep,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Mike, you're on the air.
Okay, hi. How you guys doing this morning?
Great.
Oh, boy, I can't get you.
You're on the air, Mike.
Oh, great. Okay. Hey, I got two champions. I got one championship. Let's do an early champion. Doug, it's you, because I came across a YouTube of you giving Jim Branson the final call on the Ohio State game.
Oh, yeah?
And I thought there was a very class act. So, champ to you, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. I'll give the vote to Brandy.
Okay. The champ is all the NASCAR fans who just basically went livid when Daniel Suarez won. I mean, there was just enough hatred against him. It was just unbelievable. I'm just looking through all the things on Facebook.
Why was there hatred?
Because of his race. He won because he was. Yeah, it was just racial.
Wait, he won because what?
He won because he was good. The fans, on the other hand, certain people, I should say, not everyone, certain people just denigrated his race. That's all. And that's
is that ethnicity?
Yeah, his ethnicity. I'm sorry. I should have been a little bit more clear.
I'm saying, race is the right word. It's just when we're talking about auto racing, it's hard to,
he won the auto race fair and square. But the way these people took on him after that, it was bothering me.
Well, I hope it's few and far between, and I hope it's a limited case. And I hope, again, I try not to overreact to stuff you see on social media. But I really, really hope that, and it was an incredible finish, 3 wide. Now, I don't remember seeing a photo finish with 3 cars. I'm sure it's happened before, and the race fans can tell us all about it. But if he got hatred based upon that would be a shame. 248-539-9797. Let's get to our champ of the weekend. My champ of the weekend is one Patrick Kane. He had the 2 overtime game winners going back to late last week. But yes, the yesterday's was awesome and got everything about it from 3-on-3 hockey to getting the break and having so much time. I mean, even Ken Cal, he had so much time because he picked up the puck almost in his own zone. And Ken Cal was like,
center ice.
Ken Cal in the play-by-play had time to say, "Oh, the drama," and Kane then finished it. Thing of beauty. So Patrick Kane, my champ of the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chicago Blackhawks fans. They were tremendous. The ovation was great. Appreciation for Patrick Kane as he returns to Chi-Town. They had the nice video up that they showed on the screen. And I don't even think it bothered the fans that Kaner got the overtime winner. Like, he scores a goal and immediately goes towards the boards on the opposite end of where the benches are, raises his hands up in the air and showtime or whatever. And the fans seem elated with it. Like, hey, that's our hero. We loved him. He brought us 3 Stanley Cups. This is amazing. We miss you. And we don't have to see you anytime soon, but this was a nice finish.
You champ some fans. I'm going to chump some fans. I'm chumping the Wake Forest fans, the court storming, hurting Duke's Kyle Filipowski. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of good things that have to go away because people took it too far. Maybe this was avoidable. I feel like it was only a matter of time. And I don't know what the long-term word is on Filipowski's injury, but I'm kind of sensing that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back on the court storm.
I don't know if it is or isn't. That's something we can get into later on. But it's an interesting development, to say the least. But these things don't typically result in somebody getting hurt just because it did. I don't know if it needs to be redone or not, but we can look at that. My chump, Michigan State hoops, dropping back-to-back games at home. It's kind of unacceptable at Michigan State. They're going to have to win likely 2 of the last 3 games, maybe a Big Ten tournament game just to improve their seeding there in the NCAA, and hopefully they can still make the NCAA despite this limping to the finish line. The heartbreaking loss yesterday against Ohio State.
248-539-9797. Get your champ and chump votes in here on Carson Anderson. Kyle writes in, champ Patrick Kane, chump Tom Izzo. I love the guy and appreciate all he's done, but it's time to move on. The program's absolutely dead. Absolutely dead might be a strong statement.
Well, last time we thought they were dead because they were limping to the end of the season. They made it to the Final Four.
Tony in Troy, Champ James Reimer. The Wings are not in that game yesterday if it isn't for him. Chump Tom Izzo, complete mismanagement, keeping Sissoko in the game instead of Booker for the last 7 minutes.
Yeah, Booker played really well in the first half and then did not play. What was it? The last 15 minutes, I think, of the game. He was held out. That was disappointing because he had played well.
Champ, obviously Patrick Kane absolutely injected energy into the team. Chump, obviously Wake Forest for court storming that injured the Duke player. It's from Ryan in Arizona. Champ, Patrick Kane, obviously. Chump, Scott Harris for potentially not trying to sign Bellinger or anyone else besides Mark Canna. But, oh, yeah, I guess I should be excited about Gio Urshela. That's from an unnamed texter. Yeah, I'm gonna watch this one. I can't move the goalposts here a little bit. I expected more this offseason. Do I like the direction of the Tigers? It feels like they have a young core that's ready to make an impact. And has already made an impact. Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, now Cole Keith. I think the young pitchers. I just can't wait for Job. I think Jackson Jobs, everything about him screams. And I hope he's healthy, but that's my biggest concern. But I think Job's going to be electric. And here we sit. I thought this would be a bigger offseason. I thought it would be.
I thought that maybe the third base was something they were going to address more, whether it was Chapman or not. They went with Urshela, which is interesting. Is it an upgrade? It's likely an upgrade if he can stay healthy, because that's been an issue with him. It'd be nice to see if because there's still some players out there in free agency, but I guess he hasn't earned the trust of Tiger fans like Brad Holmes has with the Lions. And both guys do things right now. They're doing things similarly. Brad Holmes did it with the draft and any free agent signings he has. They're not like these giant free agent signings. Scott Harris is kind of doing it in a similar fashion. You spend money on Maeda and Flaherty, and you bring in Canna and now Urshela, and it's added money, but it's not top end guys. It's not Cody Bellinger for sure. It's not Blake Snell, and that could be disappointing. But if the process that he's going through right now, if his philosophy is, I don't want to block the guys that are here right now that are getting this chance, then okay, I'm going to buy it for a little bit longer here. But I think a lot of these people that are upset because they're not getting the bigger name guy, are they automatically assuming that Kerry Carpenter is going to take a big step back? Are they assuming that Torkelson and Green, they're not going to improve where they're at? Or some other players on this roster? You can look at, I guess, simply at third base and say, look, I just wanted to address third base.
Yeah. And
they didn't do it as well as I wanted them to.
Well, if they had gotten a Chapman or a Bellinger, would they be talked about more seriously to win the division?
Sure.
And shouldn't that be the goal?
Yeah, I think it should be a goal. But if you don't want to give somebody a 5-year contract, then maybe that kind of eliminates some of those players. Bellinger only got a 3-year deal.
Mm-hmm. With an out after every year.
Yeah, which is, this is kind of like where baseball's going here. We've seen it bite the Tigers in a couple different ways.
Positionally, I'm not sure Bellinger makes as much sense, but it would have been a bold move. More your phone calls and feedback coming up. It's Carson Anderson. Champ and Chump, get your votes in. We'll have more from Brad Holmes as the show goes on. Some interesting predictions about the Red Wings at the trade deadline. I have to wonder if one is already outdated, and it came Friday. Hey, I know it just made it through the weekend, but that doesn't mean that the party has to end. Keep the fun going with Happy Hour at Twin Peaks. There really isn't a bar in the state that can touch their happy hour. Monday through Thursday, 2 to 6 and 10 to close. They offer up some of the best deals in town on some of your favorite food and drinks. $3 Wells, $4 tall domestics, and $3 shots. They all pair great with scratch-made favorites like the mozzarella cheese bites, fried pickles, queso, and mini tacos. You can get a shot of beer, an app, and some tacos. Forget this, less than $20. Less than $20. What would you rather do? Sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic on your way home while they're fixing the damn roads? Or hang out with the most beautiful Twin Peaks girls in the state while taking advantage of the awesome food and drink prices? To know about all their awesome food and drink prices and all their specials that they got going on all the time, go to TwinPeaksRestaurant.com. That's TwinPeaksRestaurant.com. That is also the way that you can find the location nearest you. Twin Peaks eats, drinks, and scenic views. Doug Carr, Scott Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket. 248-539-9797. One of Gators' least favorite is retiring. Get to that in the 11 o'clock hour. You roll your eyes every time this name comes up on the air. Let's get back to your phone calls. We go to Paul. You're on 97.1 The Ticket. What's up, Paul?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
Obviously fans are funny, right? And we know it's always not the same fans, right? Mm-hmm. But